to make it over here from the legislative building, so I'm going to call the Senate Committee on Education, Higher Education to order. I'd like to start out by thanking our Senate Sergeant at Arms, Terry Barnhart, Michael Cavanis, Jake Doran, Sherry Hedrick, and Hal Roach, always keeping us organized and on time. We have only one bill on the calendar, and I do want to say for the audience, we've had folks sign up, and so that sign-up sheet will come up to me, and we will get as many people as we can to speak. We haven't determined whether it's going to be 1 minute or 2 minutes just yet, because we want to make sure we give everyone the appropriate amount of time. So we'll see where we are after the bill presentation and the senators have their questions answered, and then we'll move to comments and questions from the gallery. So without further ado, Senate Bill 49, Parents' Bill of Rights. Senator Galey, if you'd like to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everybody. Senate Bill 49 is the Parental Bill of Rights, and I will walk through the bill and then entertain questions from the committee. So the Parents' Bill of Rights starts out with an enumeration of basic rights that a parent has unless there is an exception that exists in law. For example, the right to the education and care of the child, moral or religious training, enrolling in school, accessing and reviewing education records, making health care decisions, prohibiting the creation or storage of a biometric scan of the child, prohibiting the creation and storage of DNA of the child, and so forth. Also, it includes the right to be promptly notified if an employee of the state suspects that a criminal offense has been committed against the child, unless that incident has been reported to law enforcement and notification of the parent would impede the investigation. The right to parent, the Parents' Bill of Rights are not absolute. Obviously, the parent does not have the right, cannot abuse or neglect the child or engage in unlawful conduct. An employee of the state who encourages, coerces, or attempts to encourage or coerce a child to withhold information from his or her parent may be subject to disciplinary action. Then there's Section 2, or Part 2, has requirements for the public school unit. The General Assembly finds that parental involvement and empowerment is fundamental to education. And as part of that, we want parents to be involved. So the public school units shall inform parents of their legal rights and responsibilities and give the parents information about the children. Parents have legal rights with regards to their children's education, including the right to consent in health and safety education programs. There's some immunization rights, reviewing statewide assessment results, requesting evaluation for giftedness or disability, the right to inspect public unit textbooks and other supplementary instructional materials, right to access information relating to the public education system, and the right to review all available records of materials their child has borrowed from a school library. Then the State Board of Education shall develop a parent's guide to student achievement to make information available to the parents about how they can positively impact their child's education. And then there's the parental information has to regard or include the course of study, textbooks, and other supplementary instructional materials for the child and policies for inspection and review of those materials. Parents are entitled to know the services available at the school, opportunities for parental participation, educational choices that are available to the parents, the rights of students with disabilities, and resources for information on the importance of student health and other available resources for parents. The parent guide for student achievement has to be provided at the beginning of each school year and has to be updated. The public school unit policies will increase parental involvement. The parental involvement must be important to the public school unit. They will tell parents how to participate, and they will establish policies and procedures for reviewing curriculum, establishing a means for parents to object to textbooks and supplementary materials, and they have to make sure that parents are aware of how to object, and establish a process for parents to learn about the nature and purpose of clubs and activities involved, and other things about the child's school. When a parent requests information, then they ask the principal for the information. The principal has up to 20 days to provide the information. Then the request goes to, if it's not fulfilled, then the superintendent has 10 days, and then it goes to the governing body of the educational unit, but there is no judicial review of the decision of the governing body. That decision is final. There's notifications of student physical and mental health. So a governing body of a public school unit shall adopt procedures to notify the parent of each health care service offered at the school and the means for the parent to provide consent for a service. Prior to any changes in the name or pronoun used for a student in school records or by school personnel, there must be notice to the parent of the change. The procedure shall include a requirement that the school personnel encourage a child to discuss issues related to the child's well-being with her parents and facilitate discussion of the issue with the parents. The educational unit cannot keep health information secret from the parents. School personnel shall not discourage or prohibit parental notification of and involvement in critical decisions affecting a student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well-being. There must be age-appropriate instruction for grades kindergarten through 4th grade. For children approximately ages 5 through 9, instruction on gender identity, sexual activity, or sexuality shall not be included in the curriculum. And the curriculum is defined as including the standard course of study and support materials, locally developed curriculum, supplemental instruction, and textbooks and other supplementary materials. But curriculum does not include responses to student-initiated questions. When parents have concerns, there have to be remedies and if the parental concern has not been resolved within 30 days following the date of notification by a parent, then the parent may either notify the State Board of Education and request a parental concern hearing. If they are successful at the parental concern hearing, then they can, there is no cost to the parent. Well, there's no cost to the parent if they're unsuccessful either. Or the parent can bring an action against the public school unit in the court system, and if they get an injunction against the school system, then they can obtain attorney's fees and costs. Then there's parental rights to opt in to protected information surveys. Protected information surveys are survey analysis or evaluation that include any number of different kinds of things, including political affiliations or beliefs of the student or the student's parent, mental or psychological problems of the student or the student's family, sex behavior or attitudes, religious practices, income outside of needing to participate in a program that financial status qualifies the family or the student for that program. So if the public school unit wants to give a protected information survey, they have to make it available, they have to provide it to the parent and receive written or electronic consent of the parent before the student is permitted to participate in the protected information survey. The school unit has to tell the State Board of Education about their policies, and there's a procedure for the State Board of Education to report to the Joint Legislative Education Oversight Committee and the Joint Legislative Commission on Governmental Ops the information that they've received from the schools. Part 3 has to do with parental authorization for the health care of minors. Parents have to consent to medical treatment in writing. Outside, this particular provision is outside the school setting. This is in the health care setting. So I would assume that since this is the Education Committee, that we'll be talking about that section and when a bill is heard in the Health Care Committee. So, Mr. Chairman, that is a brief overview of the bill, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Senator Galey. Are there questions from members of the committee? Senator Chaudhary, I'm surprised. I think Senator Davis used to sit over there, didn't he?
Well, I guess the ghost of Senator Davis has taken over me, Senator Lee. It's good to see you and good to see Senator Galey. My question, Mr. Chair, is, I guess last weekend, Democrats and Republicans, we all gathered at the Hunt Holhauser Institute. We discussed our focus on expanding early childhood education, creating workforce readiness, building school accountability, and even raising teacher pay. During our 2 days together, did we ever discuss making the Parents' Bill of Rights a priority?
Senator Chaudhary, since I was a co-chair of that committee along with Senator Batch, Representative Clemens, and Representative Hardister, that was not on the agenda, although I'm not sure if individual legislators from the House or the Senate had those discussions with each other.
Mr. Chair, I'd just simply point out that, I think the fact that this is the first bill, to me, illustrates that it's a misplaced priority based on the gathering we had at the Hunt Holhauser Institute.
Aside from that, having both Democrat and Republican co-chairs establishing the agenda, I hear you, but if Senator Galey would like to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that myself and members of my caucus really share the concerns about teacher pay, the teacher shortages, discipline in the public schools, all kinds of other issues that are related to public education. We can walk and talk and chew gum at the same time. We can be concerned about those things and also be concerned about the rights of parents in schools. I have heard quite a bit from parents who are concerned about what is going on in the school system. People have been frustrated by their inability to get information from the school system about various things. And I think that it's always a good time. I think if we start out, actually, a legislative system emphasizing that the parents have rights and the parents are the ones ultimately responsible for the children's education, I think that's an outstanding place to start the discussion about education in North Carolina for the biennium.
Thank you, Senator Galey. Any other questions from the committee? So now we'll move to a public comment section.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I had a question.
I'm sorry, Senator Marcus.
Yes, thank you. This is my first time sitting on this committee. I'm disappointed, I'll say, that we're here on a bill that is so divisive, and I think the wrong priority to start us out on an education committee for our state. But I don't set the agenda, as you pointed out, Senator Lee, so this is the bill we're debating today. My question for the bill sponsor is, what feedback have you received from some of the people that this bill will directly impact? I'm specifically thinking of teachers, librarians, healthcare professionals, school counselors, and the business community about the harmful consequences of these proposals.
Senator Galey.
Thank you, Senator. It baffles me to think that this bill could be divisive, quite frankly. I cannot understand why it would be controversial to say that children 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old should not be taught about sexuality or sexual activity in a public school classroom. That blows my mind that would even be controversial. It baffles me that there would be controversy about a parent knowing what's going on with their child at school, a public school, particularly given that we're talking about government-sponsored education, a government-run school. We have compulsory attendance in the state of North Carolina. As an attorney speaking to another attorney, we know that when the government acts, that citizens have rights. They have due process rights, the right to be heard. And those should not be left behind in the station wagon or the minivan when we drop off our children at school. We have the right to be involved in our children's education, and how that can possibly be controversial, I cannot understand it. Gay parents want their children to be taught how to read and do math and not about sexual activity in kindergarten through 4th grade. Straight parents want the same thing. We all want what's best for our children. And the more involvement that parents have, absent a showing of neglect or abuse on the part of a parent, absent some reasonable and substantial concern, it's better for the children, it's better for the community, and it's better for our society.
Do you have a follow-up?
Follow-up. I would just say that I am surprised that you are surprised that this is controversial, and that tells me that you haven't, in response to my question, which again was what feedback have you received from the people who will be impacted by this, teachers, librarians, healthcare professionals, and the business community, because I've heard from them. I'm happy to share with you after this committee what they're saying about the previous version of this bill and also this bill. And I hope that, I believe we're going to have an opportunity, Mr. Chair, to hear from the public. And I hope that the input we receive from the citizens of North Carolina is also considered as this bill moves through committee.
Thank you, Senator Marcus. We will have an opportunity for the public to speak today, and there's also, this bill will go to health care after this, so I can't say what those chairs will do, but I suspect they'll have public comment as well.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond?
Yes, Senator Gailey.
Yes, thank you, Senator Marcus. You're right. I did not respond to your first part of your question about whether I'd received feedback. I have received feedback, and it is extremely supportive from the parents. And also, by the way, people in the business community are also parents, and also count on having a productive and mutually supportive relationship with the public school system where they're not treated as if they can't be trusted with important information about their children's physical or mental well-being.
Senator Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Gailey, I would like to ask you, made emphasis.
If you could direct to the chair if you don't mind. Thank you very much, Senator
I would
Smith.
like to ask, emphasis was made on ages 4, 5, and 6 being taught inappropriate information. I wanted to know what records do we have of this happening in our North Carolina schools? Do we have specific records?
Senator Gailey.
Thank you, Senator, for the question. There's anecdotal evidence that these things have come up, and people are definitely concerned about it. I'll say that.
Follow-up?
Follow up. At that age, like 4, 5, and 6, kindergarten, 1st grade, is that the information?
Senator Gailey.
Thank you. Actually, there is a video being circulated. I don't know if it's been removed or taken down. That was on Twitter. That was actually preschool children earlier than this, younger than this, I think. And I've heard from people from the Apex area with concerns about what books have been shared with the children in those grades. Yes.
Senator Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As someone with kids in school right now, 2 children in school, very proud of both of my children. I am actively engaged in their education. And I don't think anyone in this room is here saying that parental involvement in education is a bad thing or is wrong. We have for decades been trying to get parents more involved in their children's education. But that's not what this bill is about, and we all know that. And so my question is, when we look at this bill, which is a copy and paste of something we did last session, which was shelved by the Speaker, which Governor Cooper said he would veto it if it got to his desk because he was worried it would harm children and our ability to attract top-tier companies to our state. So given that feedback that we've received, I'm curious of why the leadership of this body has made this such a top priority right out of the gate for this new biennium.
Senator, I'm going to have Senator Gailey respond, but I just want to make a quick comment. You say the bill is something other than it is, and I just encourage you to read it. There's also, if you haven't had a chance, there's a bill summary on the dashboard that can kind of outline it for you. This is not the exact same bill that we had. There are some changes that came from feedback from parents. parents in the LGBTQ community as well as other parents. And so the leadership is, it's nice that you call us leadership, but we're not the leadership. We're running a bill with Senator Barnes because we're concerned about the ability of parents to get information from schools. Not all schools are doing it, clearly, but some schools are. And it's important for the health and well-being of children, and that is a top priority in my eyes. Your children, my children, and everyone else's children. And so that's why I think this bill is moving forward. And Senator Galey, if you'd like to respond.
Thank you. Senator Garrett, I think it's awesome that your experience with your children's education has been so positive. And I'm sure that, with your status as being a senator and serving on the Education Committee, that has perhaps smoothed some wrinkles for you that other parents don't have, or don't have access to those kind of privileges. I have heard from parents over the years, which has greatly informed my public service as an elected official, where schools stiff-arm parents. They do that. The administration ignores people. They don't return your phone calls. They disrespect the parents. I mean, maybe in Guilford County, you have unusually responsive administrators. But unfortunately, from my understanding from my conversations, that is not the case around the state. And there are parents who need to have, to be made aware of the rights that they have and told how they can exercise those rights.
Follow-up, Senator Garrett.
I just have to make a comment, and I'll be very brief. But I think it's very demeaning to public school teachers, administrators, staff, early childhood education workers in this state that you think they only respond to parents because of their position. And for the record, I'm brand new member to the Education Committee, and I have not had trouble interacting with our schools in Guilford County when I wasn't on the Education Committee. So let's not cast aspersions that they're only responding to people because of their position, because I think it's demeaning to the public servants of this state.
Senator Galey.
Thank you. Senator Garrett, obviously, I would not want to demean public school teachers who do an incredible job day after day in very difficult circumstances across the state, trying to educate our children and teach them how to read and how to do math. But the simple fact is that some parents are not articulate. Some parents have their own mental health problems. Some parents have other significant social, financial challenges, and they do not receive the same response from their public school system that other people, regardless of if they're an elected official or not, other people might receive. I think that's just a fact of life, and I think that acknowledging that does not demean anyone.
Senator Murdoch.
Yes, sticking with teachers and their needs, just this morning the News and Observer reported that teaching vacancies have risen in our public schools by over 50%, putting even more responsibilities on our school system that has really been tested and pushed to the brink during the height of the COVID pandemic. I think we can all agree on that. So again, do want to lift up our teachers, our educators, even before joining this committee, talk with teachers all over the state, and now represent 2 school boards that I think are doing the very best that they can. And what I'm hearing consistently is they're struggling to retain and keep educators. So I want more information around how this Parent Bill of Rights will help address the priority that we're having with rising vacancies in all of our school systems across the state.
I'd like to clarify some statistics, and then I'm going to defer to Senator Galey to ask questions. The HLR that Senator Chaudhary mentioned, a conference that occurred over the last few days that was co-chaired by both Democrats and Republicans that set the agenda. The DPI came and they said the attrition rate has remained relatively constant over the last decade at 7%. The first 3 years for teachers is where we're kind of experiencing a 15% attrition rate. So while I'm sure the News and Observer has all its facts, absolutely right, based upon what the experts and DPI are reporting, and I think we're going to see that report come out either tomorrow or Friday, it's going to outline those. Not to say that some school districts are not having, individual school districts are not having challenges. It's really just kind of a statewide statistic. So Senator Galey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Murdoch, you say we're struggling to retain and keep teachers. One of the things that I have heard over the years, I served 4 years as an Alamance County Commissioner and was the joint liaison to the Alamance Burlington school system during those 4 years, and sat through a lot of school board meetings and listened to their discussions and deliberations. And also I've talked to a lot of teachers over the years. And one of the things that I understand, without having any statistical evidence to back it up, is that teachers get frustrated because they feel like they're being asked to be social workers or counselors or therapists, and they're not trained to do those jobs. Well, this bill, I think, is an acknowledgement that they're not counselors and they shouldn't be doing those jobs. This bill is, I think, emphasis is that teachers are there to teach the content, the subject matter that they're hired to teach, and not to step into the role of a parent or other type of confidential relationship with a public school student.
Yeah, quick follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have mentioned that some of the initial meetings we've been having across the state that legislators have gathered were bipartisan. So I also would like to take that as a nod that hopefully we can work collaboratively on issues that are not addressed by this legislation, such as how to retain our teachers, how to increase their pay. I think that is something that we can do collaboratively. And you mentioned more support in the school systems overall, especially with counselors, school nurses. And so I'm really hopeful that we can look at that. I do think that this first step misses that mark. And so I really do hope that we can listen to those teachers that really are asking for a lifeline from the state to do just that and provide them with the support they need to educate our children.
Thank you, Senator Murdoch, and I think that will come through the budget process, and be happy to sit down and work with you and anyone, any senator, whether on this committee or not, as we move forward in that process. We know that we do have some challenges out there, and so long as we can agree on a baseline of what those statistics are, we can hopefully address those. Thank you very much. Senator Lazara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is mainly a comment. First of all, I appreciate the bill. I appreciate Senator Galey and you, Senator Lee, and Senator Barnes for introducing this bill. And I'm hearing about vacancies and teacher retention and some of the other things, and I'm trying to understand how that relates to this bill. This bill is about giving parents the rights that they deserve in communication. It doesn't require anyone to do anything different. It's a communication pipeline. It's the ability to know what your kids are doing, what their education consists of, and certain rights you have as a parent. I'm not sure how that relates to entry-level teacher not taking a job because they have to communicate with the parents. I would think that that's part of an instruction. So as I see it, I'm not sure it'll impact any of those items. That's a whole separate subject and a whole separate issue that's not related to what we're doing here today.
Senator Murdoch and then Senator Newton.
Thank you, Senator Lazar, and that's exactly our point. We have outlined that there are so many challenges that our students are facing, that teachers are facing, and that's the point that we're making, that we don't believe that this first step addresses any of those issues. So we'll continue to share that because we would love to work with you on all of those issues. We don't think this legislation does that. So we will look forward to lining out how parents already have a lot of these opportunities to do that. That's the feedback that I'm receiving. So that's the point that we're making exactly, that we don't think that this legislation addresses the true issues that we've talked about ad nauseum over the last 2 years, especially dealing with COVID-19.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Senator Galey.
may I respond a little bit?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I would just respond saying that the budget process is a long one, and it starts in the House this time. If we're going to wait until we get a budget where we can deal with issues about teacher pay or other financial matters before we deal with the Parents' Bill of Rights, I'm sorry, that doesn't make any sense to me. We can prioritize things have things on a high priority, and yet understand that in the calendar of the General Assembly, some things are heard at some times and other things are heard at other times. This is not the time, the February 1st is not the time to deal with budget issues. There's a process to do that. It is the time to deal with policy issues, and that's what this bill does.
Senator Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank Senator Galey and you, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Barnes for your hard work on this effort. I'm just a freshman again, and it's nice to be back.
The key word is again.
Yeah, again, and it's nice to be on the Education Committee again. And but some things that have been said, I thought it was appropriate for me to comment. Having been out of office for 6 years and having finished getting my kids through high school and into college and so forth, when I came along and when a lot of people came along, these ideas about parental rights, they were a given. They were understood. And I was fortunate to grow up in a time where my mom had been a teacher, and it was easy for my parents to know what was going on. They didn't even have to ask. Because they were told, but we're in a different time now. We live in a different time, and unfortunately, we have to spell out that parents have rights. And there's a lot of parents that don't feel empowered. They feel like they're kind of going up against proverbial city hall if they have an issue. And I think it's really critical that we spell it out and make sure that parents understand that they have fundamental rights, because parents ultimately have the final decision about their children's education. The idea that they don't, how that's taken root in some people's minds, and it has. It has. I mean, anybody on the other side of the aisle or out in the public that wants to contrast that, I'm not buying it. It's obvious that there are many people that don't think parents have any rights. We've seen politicians make statements like that, haven't we? And so I'm really glad that this bill has come forward. It's overdue, unfortunately, when we talk about priorities. And if we're going to talk about getting back to the basics with funding and making sure our schools are performing, we need to first start with the fundamentals of clearing up that parents have the final say about their children's education. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Newton. Any other questions? Got Senator Barnes.
Just a comment. So I see this bill as a win-win, not only for parents and students, but for parents and teachers as well. I see it as fostering parental involvement, and it clearly sets expectations for the role of public instruction. So, and also promoting academic transparency. So at the appropriate time, Mr. Chair, I move for a favorable report.
Thank you, Senator Barnes. Senator Lazar? Any other comments or questions from the committee before I move to the general public? We don't have a lot of time, so everyone is not going to be able to be heard, and I apologize for that. The only fair way for me to do this is go down the list, and I think we'll do a minute and a half, and maybe we can get the most amount of people that we can. So the first person I have on the list is Renee, and I don't want to mispronounce your last name, so if you can help me with that, I would appreciate that. And again, we're just going to move to a minute and a half, and the Sergeant at Arms will kind of let you know when your time's up.
Good morning. It's Renee Seckel. Thank you so much. I am the parent of 3 children in the Wake County Public School System. I've had kids in public schools since 2011, and I am absolutely gobsmacked to discover that until this bill is passed, I didn't have any rights. I have been in my children's schools. Gosh, there were times nigh on every day. I ran the book fair. I ran the yearbook. I have been in my kids' schools. I have rights. I know what books my kids are taking out of the library because I looked in their backpacks. I know what name my kids are going by because I asked them. Now, I will be honest, my kid changed their name earlier this year, and I didn't like it. Not because I was against who they are as a human being, but because I named my child a very, I call the Supreme Court Justice Test name. And they wanted to go by Cloud. I said no. But luckily, my child was able to be at school and be called Cloud and feel safe and loved and accepted for who they were, with or without my permission. I failed as a parent in not giving them the information, the freedom and the safety they needed at home, but they were able to find it at school. This bill cuts all children off from that feeling of safety and love and acceptance. What you are doing is wrong.
The next person I have on the list is Stephanie. Clearly, I'm not good at reading here. Haver? Thank you very much.
Yes. Hi, my name is Stephanie Haver. I'm a resident of Durham and a constituent of Senator Murdoch's in District 20. Even though I'm a native North Carolinian, I lived in Texas for almost 20 years. Initially, I went to pursue my postgraduate education, and I stayed and began a family. I have a husband and 3 children, and my children are all on the autism spectrum with their individual strengths and weaknesses. Now, you may be wondering what brought me back home in June of last year. It wasn't work. That would have been great. It was bills like this that were passed into law in Texas. Consider me the oracle here. This bill is just the tip of the iceberg. It does not assist me in protecting my children. What it does is protect children from learning about the world outside of their own zip code. My North Carolina public school education and higher education includes Senator Smith's district, Senator Barnes' district, Senator Lee's district, go Seahawks, and Lenore and Wake counties. And the first mention of anything related to sexuality was in 5th grade in Franklin County at Youngsville Elementary, special class that taught me my body's anatomy. I am forever grateful to the North Carolina Public Schools for providing me with education and knowledge as well as life lessons about humanity, equality, and kindness. No one is talking about explicit teachings on sexual behaviors to a small child. Thank you.
And just the 5th grade growth and changes classes is still in place in the curriculum. The next person up is Brenda Dimos.
Brenda Dimas.
Thank you.
So in the 9th grade, when my best friend and I were both 14, her parents, who are extremely conservative and religious, found out not directly from her that she was gay. They decided that the correct punishment was to remove her from school, isolate her from all her friends and closest relatives, and take away all methods of communication. Because they thought I was a bad influence on her, because I too am gay. They insulted me and made me feel like I had a disease. The worst part is that she was not the only friend who was outed to her parents and received this level of punishment all while we were in high school. I lost several friends, not to the typical high school dramas, but to homophobic parents that believe the worst thing their child could do is be attracted to someone of the same gender. To this day, I have friends who are older than 21 who have still not been granted the privilege of sharing the most beautiful and important parts of who they are with the people who are supposed to love and support us most. I know this bill says there's an exception when a reasonably prudent person would believe that the disclosure would result in the child becoming an abused juvenile or neglected juvenile. But would you assess each child's situation? What would the time frame look like? And how can you be sure or even know what levels of abuse or neglect are acceptable? I urge you to please vote against this bill. You don't have to love us, but your job requires you to protect and serve all your constituents, even the gay ones.
The next person up is Callum Bradford.
My name is Callum Bradford, and I am currently a junior in high school. I've decided to come here today to share how SB 49 would affect me and many other LGBTQ+ students. I am very lucky to have family and friends that are supportive of my identity. Unfortunately, this is not the case for everyone. Many students feel comfortable changing their name and pronouns at school, but may not feel as comfortable doing so at home due to possible lack of support from their parents. SB 49 aims to protect students, but notifying parents of their child's name or pronoun change before the child is ready to tell them directly leaves us more vulnerable and unprotected. Many LGBTQ students are already terrified to come out to their family or friends, and this bill only adds an extra obstacle for them. We deserve supportive environments where we can feel safe and learn to be social. This is the priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Callum. Jack Turnwald.
Good morning. My name is Jack Turnwald. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm a trans, non-binary resident of North Carolina and a parent of 2 public school children. I was an educator for 19 years. I'm a Fulbright Scholar with National Board Certification, a master's from Duke, and twice recognized as Teacher of the Year. In my final years teaching, I watched the number of suicide assessments in our schools increase. I watched the NCGA's refusal to fund school nurses, social workers, psychologists, and counselors at recommended numbers. I watched the unfunded mandates, lack of equitable pay, unrealistic expectations, and micromanaging of teachers drive educators from the profession in record numbers. And I watched unsupported queer youth suffer due to a lack of education all around about who they are and how they can be supported in our schools. I left teaching due to my own experience of discrimination from adults within the system as an out trans educator. It is unsafe at present to be a trans educator or student in hostile states like ours. And currently, I'm a DEI consultant, and I sit on the advisory team of the Rainbow Collective for Change. This bill perpetuates the harm of silencing queer youth and keeping communities ignorant instead of providing the information necessary for folks to understand and support one another. Under the guise of parental rights, you are trying to criminalize queerness. You want your children to share their pronouns and come out to you rather than legislating educators to traumatically out them? Try creating an inclusive environment at home that supports your child's safety.
Tanya Jimenez.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Tania Jimenez. I am a transgender woman. Proud of it. I'm here again. Thanks to you guys, I had to leave the state in 2017 because you guys put a law where I couldn't use the public bathroom, where a transgender woman could go to jail just for using the bathroom. I would have killed myself if I would have stayed here. But I left to California, and I did all my name change, sex, and everything. And I'm back to North Carolina. And I just want to tell you guys, I have a niece, I have nephews that I want to protect them against this kind of law. We need to stop North Carolina from being homophobic. And the way we do it is in your hands. We need to stop that. You know, we can't be killing our kids, our education. You guys need to work and spend money on creating programs for students LGBT, not against LGBT. Thank you.
Thank you. Charlie Burnett.
All right, my name is Charlie Burnett. I'm a resident of Raleigh, North Carolina. Every person in this room is well aware that this bill is not about protecting children, nor is it about the rights of parents. This bill is a continuation of discrimination that was used to craft Amendment 1 and House Bill 2, both of which were repealed, or as they say in sports lingo, 0 for 2. The cruelty is the point. The men and women who have crafted this bill and the men and women who support it are aware that this will further stigmatize LGBTQ plus students and educators and lead to even higher rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide among them. As I mentioned, the cruelty is the point. If a parent has a problem with their child attending school with or being educated by people who identify as LGBTQ+, they are perfectly able to either place their child in a private school or to apply for the Opportunity Scholarship Program, which, while forbidding discrimination by participating schools on the basis of race, color, or national origin, does not prohibit discrimination on the basis of religion, disability, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other characteristics. Those parents already have their choice. Our children have already endured a pandemic in which many of them lost loved ones and friends. The students who this bill intends to target are currently having to deal with elected officials in our state, some of whom hold positions on the State Board of Education, referring to them as filth, as having no purpose under God's eyes, and as being inferior to their straight classmates simply because of how God created them. I'd ask that the people against this bill look into North Carolina's School Violence Prevention Act passed in 2007, as well as Title IX.
Thank you very much. Sorry, we just have to give everybody the opportunity to speak. Andre Beliveau is up next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good morning. My name is Andre Beliveau. I'm the Government Affairs Manager at the John Locke Foundation, a public policy think tank here in North Carolina. The John Locke Foundation supports education policy in North Carolina that ensures transparency and accountability in education and that upholds the rights of parents and guardians to oversee the direction of their children's education, physical health, and mental well-being. We believe Senate Bill 49 ensures these policy goals. We are encouraged by the Senate's efforts in this bill to address multiple elements of instructional and administrative transparency, the Parent's Guide for Student Achievement, which we believe will help with learning loss post-COVID, and holistically empowering parental involvement in their children's educational experience. Overall, we believe the language in this bill is a fair and reasonable improvement from the version of this bill last biennium. The John Locke Foundation will continue to support legislative efforts in education policy focused on transparency, parental empowerment, and school choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person up is John Rustin.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm John Rustin. I'm president of the North Carolina Family Policy Council. For many decades, state courts, federal courts, and this General Assembly have recognized that parents have a fundamental right to the care, custody, and control of their children. As Senate Bill 49 clarifies, this fundamental right does not end when a child enters a school building or a healthcare facility. In fact, one of the greatest predictors of a child's well-being and success is parental involvement. And this bill seeks to restore transparency and a sense of partnership and cooperation between parents and their children's school and healthcare providers. Unfortunately, we are seeing too many instances these days where the interests of parents and families are being overlooked, ignored, and even condemned. As for the concerns expressed about the bill outing children to their parents, we have compassion for individuals who are struggling with identity issues and gender dysphoria. However, for a school to willfully and purposefully withhold this information from parents, especially after a student has requested to be called by a different name and referred to by different pronouns in public by their teachers and fellow students, is simply a breach of trust and a violation of the parents' right to know. Senate Bill 49 seeks to address these issues in a very direct and productive manner, and we commend it to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, I can barely speak English. Joaquin Carsano, if you wouldn't mind just correcting me.
Yes, Joaquin Carcaño. I want to say that the fact that this bill is being prioritized speaks volumes to educators and students alike. Stigma, shame, and fear are not feelings a child or youth should experience, and this bill encourages stigma, shame, and fear to flourish in the classroom. Forcing educators and school staff to out queer and trans youth to parents, restricting and censoring diverse curriculum is dangerous. As a community and as North Carolinians, we should not condone bullying as an educational strategy. This bill jeopardizes the careers of our educators and lives of our youth. Who will be responsible should a child lose their life at home as a result of this bill? Parental involvement requires trust. This destroys that foundation. Our priority should be to invest in our educational system and our youth, not drive students and teachers away into isolation and shame. I urge you to think of the long-term repercussions of this harmful bill and to lean into educational investment that allows all students and teachers to thrive. Do not be a bully in these child's lives. Fund youth in our schools, not hate. Thank you.
Thank you. Sebastian King.
Sebastian King, NC Values Coalition. NC Values greatly appreciates the work of Senator Galey, Senator Lee, and Senator Barnes, and the work of this committee to help restore the parent involvement in the education system. Unfortunately, you've heard today that in some cases, parents aren't being taken out of the school system, but NC Values and Senator Lee, Senator Barnes, and Senator Galey have been told by parents that that is occurring. And those are the parents that we're standing up for in this committee today. NC Values appreciates that, and what this bill also does is set guidelines of appropriateness for sexual education and such for kindergarten through 4th grade students. Let's just let these kids be kids once again and let the parents be involved in our school system. That's what this bill does. That's why NC Values supports it, and thank you guys.
Thank you. Ann Webb.
Hi, my name is Ann Webb. I'm Senior Policy Counsel at the ACLU of North Carolina. We wanted to emphasize that all students want to be safe at school and see themselves reflected in what they're learning. The ACLU of North Carolina is particularly concerned about the provisions in this bill that would require teachers to out students who are exploring their identity by using a particular name at school. Parents have a constitutional right to make decisions about their children's education, and that includes decisions like whether to send their kids to public or private school. But that right is not absolute, as we know from compulsory education laws in North Carolina. The right to informational privacy does extend to students in a school setting. Students have a constitutional right to share or withhold information about their sexual orientation or gender identity from their parents, teachers, or other parties. The National Association of Secondary School Principals has recognized that transgender status, legal name, and sex assigned at birth is confidential medical information and is considered personally identifiable information under the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, and cautions that disclosure of that information to other school staff or parents could violate the school's obligations under FERPA or constitutional privacy protections. This bill undermines certain children's safety, and is ultimately part of a national campaign to erase the existence of LGBT students and adults. Thank you.
Karen, excuse me, Karen Ziegler.
My name is Reverend Dr. Karen Ziegler. I represent Democracy Out Loud. When I was a teenager, I fell in love with a woman. I was completely shocked, and I contemplated suicide for months. I don't know anyone my age who's queer who didn't contemplate or attempt suicide. Parents are not a safe place for many queer children. Kids get beat up by their parents, and they often get thrown out as young teenagers to live on the streets when prostitution is the only way that they can survive. I want to say this is not about our state. This is a copycat of the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, and next they will be taking the books out of the classrooms. If you want to help our children, fully fund our public education system, as Leandro has told you to do.
Kelsey McLean.
Hi, my name is Kelsey McLean, and I'm a resident of Lee County. I'm here today to speak out against this bill and also share the voices of those I care deeply about who weren't able to rearrange their busy working lives, leave their classrooms empty, and leave their families unattended to come here and speak before you today. I also want to address something that I heard earlier. I just want to say if you're baffled by why this bill is controversial, you are entirely out of touch with your constituents, and I question if your qualifications for holding this public office are even there because you're choosing to remain that out of touch. It's very clear after hearing the voices here today. Since our time is limited, I'm going to jump into a statement from a friend of mine who is a social worker, a voice that was absent from the room today. Emmy Johnson stated, I am a social worker for a clinic. I work as a clinical care coordinator for gender affirmative care at Center for Discovery, a large eating disorder treatment company. I work with trans adolescents and adults struggling with eating disorders who often have trauma, depression, suicidality, and self-harm. There's a direct line between the safety of their schools and their mental health. This bill sends a message that we as trans people aren't wanted, aren't safe, and won't get the care, community, and love that we need. In my professional opinion, and based on the research, this bill will lead to an increase in eating disorders, an increase in self-harm, and an increase in suicide rates. Please do not move this bill forward. I've received several other statements I won't have time to share from other local parents, teachers, professors, and other queer and trans youth. Thank you.
Nathaniel Dibble. And then we have one more after that, and then we've got to address the motion from Senator Barnes.
My name is Nathaniel Dibble. Last year I graduated from Garner High School in the Wake County School District. This bill will not stop anyone from saying gay. This bill will not stop anyone from being gay, students included, me included. Queer people have always been here and always will be, a fact as immutable as the rising sun. That fact has already been very well established. In fact, we've already been through all this. We've been banished from the public before, we've been banished from taking part in daily life, and we've been banished from daily discussions. We fought it during those times, and we've been fighting it ever since. Should this bill be approved by this committee against the will of the constituents that you represent, then we, the constituents, will fight this bill with every step that it takes, just as we always have. All this law will do is isolate our students. All it will do is choke out their voices. What this law will do is set up one more roadblock between a queer person, a queer student, and their educational success. They will become casualties in the war on queer lives that you perpetuate with every word you speak. How's that for feedback, Senator?
And Tamika Kelly.
My name is Tamika Walker Kelly, elementary music teacher from Cumberland County and proud president of the North Carolina Association of Educators, and I am also a proud public school parent. All are welcome. That is a core belief and tenet of our North Carolina public schools. Instead, this bill tells portion of our communities, including your constituents, especially those that identify as LGBTQ+, that they are not welcome. Many of the provisions provided in this bill aren't even necessary because they include rights that parents already have and things that are already codified in North Carolina law. But what this bill does do, it attempts to undermine what we know to be true, that parents trust their child's public school teacher and they love their public school. And at the end of the day, the Parents' Bill of Rights does nothing to address very real issues that are facing our educational system here in North Carolina. So instead of this bill, we should be working to pass bills to ensure that every public school student, parent, and educator have the fully funded, fully resourced public schools that they deserve.
Thank you very much. Senator Gailey, I think, wanted to make a comment.
Yes, very briefly, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to say thank you to all the people who took the time out of their day to come out and comment on the bill. I think it's delightful when citizens come out to talk about things that are important in their lives and issues important to them. A couple of the, there are a number of comments that I would like to go back and talk about, but don't have time to. But I do want to stress a couple of commenters spoke about being gay and that this bill would harm gay students and put them in danger. I just wanted to emphasize that nowhere in this bill does it talk about sexual orientation or whether a student is gay or not. It only addresses the pronouns and the name, which may or may not be indicative of an issue for the child. It's just those two things need to be communicated to the parent.
Thank you, Senator Gailey. I'm going to make one kind of wrap-up comment before we hear the motion. There have been a lot of comments today, not just by legislators, but from the general public, that talks about things that really aren't in this bill. When we're talking about sexuality and a lot of these other things, that's really 9 years old and under, and we're just addressing it in the curriculum. I understand the point that folks are making that when you tell parents things after that grade, moving on from the curriculum piece, but to the sharing information with parents, I understand that's tough for some kids. I know that parents are going to parent their children, and they may not always do it right. I know I haven't always done it right. But this gives the parent the ability to fulfill the responsibility that the parent has in order to raise their child and support their child. All of us parents are not perfect, but you can't have the opportunity to do that if you don't know. Several speakers made comments about children going through very difficult times, whether it's gender identity, whether it's sexual orientation. Parents have the right to know because they might be able to help their child. Not all parents are what you described. Some parents are caring and supportive, and they can't fulfill that role unless they know. And so that's why we brought this bill forward. It wasn't to attack a particular community. It wasn't to demonize anyone in the education system or anyone in the general public or children. And so I encourage you to read the bill, and if you don't want to read the bill, just read the bill summary, and it will outline a lot of these things, and hopefully it will clarify. We may not agree on some of the things that are in here, but hopefully you'll at least have the accurate information by which to make your decision. And so having said that, Senator Barnes made a motion for a favorable report with a referral to health. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All who oppose, say no.
No.
The ayes have it. The bill's passed and is being referred to health, and we're adjourned.